Hi, and welcome back to U.S. History with Mr. Snyder, and today we're going to be finishing up the Progressive Era and discussing the election of Woodrow Wilson and his New Freedom program. Here are your learning targets for the day. We will evaluate what Wilson hoped to do with his New Freedom program. We'll talk about Wilson's efforts to regulate the economy, and we'll assess the entire legacy of the Progressive Era, or what we've been talking about for the past week or so. So let's go ahead and get started. Wilson wins in the election of 1912. So the election of 1900, McKinley won. Then Roosevelt becomes president because McKinley is assassinated. In 1904, Roosevelt wins. In 1908, Roosevelt doesn't run, and Taft wins. And Taft and Roosevelt end up arguing over the way the Republican Party should go, and their party is split down the middle. Half of them vote for Taft, half vote for Roosevelt. And what that does is it allows the Democrats to get 50% of the vote, and the Republicans split the other 50 into 25 and 25 for Taft and Roosevelt. So Wilson takes over office, and his ideas become to be known as New Freedom. Now, what New Freedom wanted to do was to place stricter government controls on what corporations could do and give more freedom to small businesses. So they really want to hurt the big guy, but not the little guy. And Wilson attacks what he calls the triple wall of privilege, or tariffs, banks, and trusts. Let's take each one of those in order. Tariffs. What he does is he and the Democrats lower tariffs so that consumers could choose between foreign and domestic goods. They want the consumers to make the choice. What this does is he also forced American companies to lower their prices if they were set too high. And the 16th Amendment basically is passed in order to make up missing money from the tariffs. So we lower the tariffs, we don't have as much tax coming in on our imports, so we need to make up that money somehow, and we do it by passing the 16th Amendment. So that is how our country came to have an income tax. We have had state income taxes for a while, but then this is now a federal income tax based on how much money you make. Banking, the way it was before, wealthy bankers could set interest rates as they please. There was no regulation, and they did this to kind of help the businesses and hurt the farmers and the little guy. So Wilson and Congress pass what is called the Federal Reserve Act, which places banks under control of a Federal Reserve Board. And that is the way we have it today. Interest rates are set by the Federal Reserve Board. Monetary policy in this country is set by the Federal Reserve Board. They set the interest rates, they supervise banks, they prevent too much money from ending up in one bank's hands as well. Of course, they don't have as many rules as they have today because the Great Depression hasn't happened yet, and that is what really reformed our banking system in America. But right now we do pass the Federal Reserve Act, which creates the Federal Reserve Board. And as trusts go, he creates the Federal Trade Commission. Trade as in trading commerce or business. It monitors business practices that might lead to a monopoly. So mergers and stuff like that have to be approved by the FTC before they can take place. They also monitor what is called false labeling or misleading advertising practices and penalize businesses that try to mislead consumers into buying their product. And he also passes what is called the Clayton Antitrust Act. So the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act kind of go together. This strengthens the previous antitrust laws like the the Sherman Antitrust Act, but Clayton also allows unions to operate more freely and under less restraint and government hampering and control over unions. So again, it's a victory for consumers and workers in this instance. So what is progressivism's legacy? Well, it lasts from, people could say, about 1885, 1890, starting alongside populism, up through World War I, when the U.S. enters in 1917. Reformers' efforts divert to support the wars, and then after the war, it virtually ended. But it does bring in a lot of achievements in public policy, social policy, political policy. We have a lot of political reforms like the initiatives, the referendums, the recalls, the government regulation of business, and Teddy Roosevelt being a trust buster, workers' rights that came into play from the Triangle Shirtwaist Company factory fire, and environmental protection by Roosevelt setting aside over 100 million acres of land so that it couldn't be harmed, and government protection for consumers like the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act. And so these things help to further progressivism's legacy into the future and carries it forward. These are things we still have today that we can thank progressivism for. So let's review our learning targets. We evaluated what Wilson hoped to do with his new freedom program and what it did. It attacked that triple wall of privilege. We talked about Wilson's effort to regulate the banks, the trusts, and the tariffs. And we talked about what the progressive era is known for. And that is actually the end of Chapter 8. You'll have a short review video after this to watch over the Wilson era. But other than that, I will see you back in class, and we'll prepare for the test. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Throughout the summer of 1912, Woodrow Wilson crosses swords with two seasoned political veterans. The Republican candidate is the current president, William Howard Taft, but his party is split right down the middle, torn between his old guard conservatives and the progressives of the Bull Moose Party. Colorful, exciting Theodore Roosevelt heads the Bull Moose ticket. He's Wilson's most formidable rival. Roosevelt wants a government with far-reaching control of national affairs. He says, only by exercising the power of government can we curb greed that sits in high places. But Woodrow Wilson talks about a new age of freedom. The history of liberty, he says, is the history of the limitation of governmental powers. Wilson's new freedom captures the imagination of the American people. On November 5th, 1912, he becomes the first Democrat in 16 years to be elected President of the United States. President Taft accompanies him to the inauguration. The former professor prepares to assume the enormous responsibilities of the presidency. As Wilson takes office, he is aware of the tremendous powers and the tremendous potential of the presidency. The man, he says, makes the office. The office doesn't make the man. The nation is entering an exciting era of change. A new age of invention and mass production have revolutionized American life. Wall Street controls the booming industrial centers which have sprung up to meet the demand for more goods. Giant holding companies rule the nation's economy, and they become the first targets of the Wilson administration. Tariffs are lowered on foreign imports to increase competition and bring down the price of goods. And for the first time, Americans will pay an income tax. Theoretically, it won't be felt by the little man, only by the rich.